we think that it's actually us that's feeling the way that we're feeling. And then we go into our mind and our mind starts spinning, trying to come up with answers to why we're feeling the way we're feeling. Sometimes we're just feeling the way we're feeling because we have an energy or entity that's attached to us that we need to revoke and rebuke and be like, no, you don't have room over this realm. You don't have room in my classroom or in my life or in my office.
Hey, soul family. Welcome to the Alive and Awake podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kay, and I have spent the last 20 years teaching people how to work with their wounds and overcome their greatest fears so they can learn how to thrive in a world where they were only taught to conform. Each week, we will dive deep into the practical, the spiritual, and the mystical so I can teach you how to do the inner work to know yourself, trust yourself, and eventually love yourself enough to create a world where you feel fully alive, awake, and free. So don't forget to hit that subscribe button and never miss an episode. Ready? Let's dive in.
Welcome to another episode, everyone. I hope that you are recovering and restored and you're starting to feel a little bit back into your energy. If you're feeling sluggish, if you're still having that holiday hangover in whatever kind of a form, know that the planets are aligning and we are about to shift into a full brand new energy, actually starting tomorrow on the 111 portal, where we will be full blown into Pisces. And we are going to start to experience more like disruption, not necessarily in a bad way, but more in like an inspired way, where we'll start to feel motivated again. We'll start to want to make some changes in our lives. Like we'll really get kind of that New Year's new flow energy that we've all been waiting for. So that is coming. But today I really felt called to dive into a part 2 of Christ consciousness and knowing how to find inner peace, freedom, and unity in this life within yourself. I did an episode right before the new year on around Christmas, and I felt like I had so much more to say. So today we're going to really talk a lot about what exactly is Christ consciousness. Who is Jesus and this teacher that came here to show us that we have authority over darkness and over the energies that want to control us, want to make us live in fear, want to make us live in doubt, and then how to know when you're under an enemy or an adversarial attack. So knowing this information has been pivotal in helping me heal from years and years and years of not only relationship karma and addictions, but unhealed trauma. If you know anything about me or if you've been following me, you know that I grew up in incredibly adverse circumstances. Had a single mom, not even like a single mom, like a teenage single mom. Like she had me when she was 16. I had a 16-year-old father who didn't want me, who then, abused me the first half every time I met him. And I went through a lot when it came to being exposed to the horrible things that happen in this world from a very, very, very young age. I had a black eye at the age of 2, like all of the things that you could imagine was the worst of the worst. And I do have to say, my mother did an incredible job of trying to get me out of that, to show me that I was loved. And, I really was her source of love for a very, very, very long time. And we grew up together. And so I had a really difficult time adjusting to what was normal. And I always compared myself to others. I felt completely worthless. I felt very empty inside. And so all these parts of my personality developed to appear normal, to manage, how I looked to other people. But inside, I was just dying and filled with shame. And so I know that a lot of you can resonate with that. I know that you probably listening can even just resonate with that, of what it feels like to feel different, or like you don't fit in, or that you're damaged or broken in some way, and that other people seem to have everything figured out, but you're wondering what is wrong with you. And I would honestly say that I would be considered something called a seeker. And a seeker is someone who always is thriving and searching for knowledge and searching for truth and just wants to know, more about the ways of this world. Because I didn't have, quote unquote, what would be looked at as a again, quote unquote, normal family unit with like a loving mother, loving father, like, siblings, all of that. I was an only child. So I didn't have anyone teaching me how to be human or how to know myself or how to live in this world. I was constantly trying to soak up information. And I can honestly say, sitting here talking to you right now, I am so grateful that I did not have those influences that other people have, because one of the hardest things that I find in working with the people that I work with is them feeling like they're being disloyal to their family if they choose themselves or they say no or they want to follow the call or the desire of their heart because they feel like they're letting people down or they're loyal to a fault, and then they end up staying stuck in situations that are life sucking and not life giving. So, in a lot of ways, I may have had a lot of trauma and I may have had a lot of turmoil and a lot of things to overcome that a lot of people didn't. But it also put me into this position where I started to find out information where I got to decide what I felt was right for me, and I didn't have anybody or any authority over me trying to convince me that like what I had to say and what I had to feel and like that I was wrong. That actually was me. And then I got into the religious aspect where I started to really get indoctrinated into like Christianity, where I had people at work coming to me and talking to me about Jesus and about their faith. And at that time, I was really drowning and struggling. I had an eating disorder. I would constantly binge drink on the weekends. I was giving my body away to men if I got too drunk. Like I would be something that society would label as like a hot freaking mess. But I also had some of the best times of my life. And again, I was like learning and trying to find myself and trying, to fit in. And it was this, really beautiful journey of self-discovery that I embarked on. And when I started to realize that something else out there was guiding me, was one of my, I would consider this like my first spiritual experience where I was like, oh, there's no way that this happened at this time on accident. So in the spiritual community, they call it like a synchronicity. But I was 19 years old, and I remember I let my boyfriend at the time borrow my car, and he went out clubbing, drinking, doing whatever. And I remember waking up in the middle of the night and he wasn't back yet. And it was like 4 o'clock in the morning. And I had called him on the dorm because we didn't have cell phones back then, like talking about aging ourselves a bit. But I called him at his dorm and the line was busy. And I kept calling and calling and calling, and the line was busy. And that was really strange to me. But something in me like knew that something was wrong. Like I had this very like gut deep instinct that I just needed to go there. I needed to walk there. I didn't know how I was going to get in. He was in a suite. It's locked up. They have staff. There was no way that I thought that I was going to get into this building, but I just knew inside something was telling me I needed to go. And so I walked all the way across campus, barefoot, heart racing, not knowing what I was going to walk into. And then when I got to his dorm, somehow there was someone walking in. I walked in right behind them. They let me in. And then when I not only walked up to his suite, which is on lockdown, by the way, you need a key to get in, the door was cracked open. And then I had another obstacle to get through, which was his actual dorm suite. So not only was all three of those doors or the two doors open, I walk into his door and that one is open too. And I'm like, how is this all happening? Right. But long story short, I end up walking in. He had his phone shoved underneath his mattress and he was in bed with another woman. So that did not go very well. But after thinking about that situation, I was like, what woke me up in the middle of the night? How did everything line up and sync up perfectly for me to go into this situation where I was able to get in? I was able to see what I needed to see. And all of the answers were like laid out there before me. I literally felt like something else took over and was guiding all of my footsteps that night. So that made me curious to start to think about what the heck is guiding me? What is out there that knows things that are going on that can orchestrate things to occur that way, to sync up so easily? And then there started to be like other things of like deja vu. And I got curious about, wait a minute, I feel like I was here before. Like this has happened to me before. And that started happening way more than I realized. And I became curious. I'm like, what is spirituality? Like, I know that when I was younger, I had a family that used to take me to church on Sundays, but it was like, yeah, there's this thing called Jesus. And if you give your life to Jesus, then, everything is going to be perfect and everything's going to be okay. And so I remember being a little girl, like in the pew, being like, yes, Lord Jesus, I make you my savior. I didn't know what I was doing. I was probably like, 10, 11, 12 years old, giving my life to Christ. And I had no idea what that even meant because I wasn't raised in religion. My mom sort of talked about God, but it wasn't something that was a part of our lives. I think she just did it when she was in crisis and she didn't know what else to do. So, she would just say, it's okay. God's going to take care of us. God's going to take care of us. And she ended up having a strong faith eventually, but it wasn't something that we actively practiced. So I became curious later in life. And I do think that I'm very, very blessed that it wasn't something that was expected of me. It wasn't demanded of me. It wasn't forced upon me. It really was my own sovereign choice to seek out what spirituality was or what religion was. And so coworkers led me into a church and I became very, very, very like devout Christian, like didn't want to move in with my husband before we got married. Like I tried to follow all the rules. I was trying to tithe, but following the rules of this book honestly wasn't helping me in my personal life because I was still drinking like a fish. I still felt pretty worthless. I still, was doing things that weren't quote unquote Christian that I would feel ashamed of or I would have to hide. And then it started to kind of spirit started to work through me. And I became really curious about the truth of who Jesus was and what he really came here to teach and what he wanted us to know. Because I was like, I heard things through scripture of like, you'll be able to do all things through Christ and more or better and above and beyond what I could do. And I was like, well, I'm not doing that. I still feel like I'm broken. I still feel like I am not saved. I'm still in a lot of pain. Like I'm still having relationships that are failed and I'm still, turning to these things that they call it quote unquote the flesh to make myself feel better. And eventually it was the moment that I decided to get down on my knees and I was suicidal and I was, heavily addicted to lots of different things. And I just said, if there is a God and if you are real, you need to take this pain from me. I can't do this on my own. I'm at a loss. And things started to shift and change from that moment. And it was the same energy that I felt that night when I walked across campus, where it was like this huge, like, energy surrounding me that I can't even explain. It just felt like this overwhelming feeling of unconditional love and support and guidance. And I was like, oh, this is the energy that actually has been guiding me my whole life and has really, when I think about the situations that I was in and the situations my mother was in, and in a lot of ways, a lot of worse things could have happened to me. Like I'm surprised that I wasn't abducted. I'm surprised that I wasn't significantly, I was tortured, but not in the way that I've worked with clients who have been tortured and things like that. But a lot of terrible things could have happened. And so I felt that there was this protection over me and that was surrounding me and guiding me. But as scripture says, like spirit won't interfere with unless with free will. Like we have our free will choice to how we want to live our life, what we want to experience in our life, the obstacles that we want to overcome, the relationships we want to have. Like we have free will choice over all of that. But my free will choices at that time were leading me down a really destructive life path because I didn't know anything different and I knew nothing else. Like I was raised in, environments that were really inconsistent, really chaotic. And that put me on the path to want something more and crave something more, but just not know how to achieve that. And so then I started to really get curious about what is the truth, because I couldn't get behind this concept or this idea that, we're all children of God, yet the only way to get to heaven is to accept Jesus as your savior, and that every other religion out there is wrong, and that everybody else that doesn't believe in Jesus is going to hell. Like, I could not in my spirit stand behind believing that we had a God that created us, that loves us so much, that's going to let us go to hell for punishment if we don't follow every single thing in one book that was created way after the death of Jesus. And so a lot of things just didn't necessarily make sense to me, and they still don't. And I believe that the Bible has been written, and let's just say there are layers and layers and layers that go into that scripture and into that text. And there's actually a council that is called the Council of Nicaea, I think, where they actually met. And it was this high council that decided what was going to be put into the Bible and what was going to be left out. And so right now we're discovering all of these gospels that are found that were left out of the Bible very, very strategically. And in those gospels, it talks about the power that we have and the authority that we have over the dark realm that we are living in right now. And that's what Jesus came here to teach and what he wanted us to know. And there were, I think it's the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Enoch, the Gospel of Mary Magdalene, the Gospel of Judas. And so there were very specific ones that were left out of that book, and a lot of them being divine, feminine, Christ consciousness entities like Mother Mary. And, they leave out that she was trained by Isis and by Hathor and like these Egyptian goddesses. And so when I started to really dive into what was going on, I was like, oh, that book has been manipulated and manipulated and manipulated, just like kind of what we're living in now, how we're being manipulated to only see certain things on the news, and how the fear and the powers that be get to decide the information that we're allowed to receive. And so I think it's important for us to be our own seekers when it comes to spiritual information and spiritual knowledge, and to move past this idea that there's one way and one path to heaven. Now, heaven isn't this external place. It is here on earth, but it is in another dimension, meaning we are right now living in a 3D matrix of reality where there's a lot of duality of right, wrong, good, evil, shame, guilt, love, bliss. Like, this dualistic world that we live in is not the real world and the high level of consciousness that we are trying to attain to. We are moving into what Earth is expanding its energy to be able to hold, and what human beings and their bodies are being able to hold, which we'll talk about in another episode about ascension symptoms and energetic upgrades. But we're moving into 5D consciousness. So Jesus came here to teach us that we have authority over the dark energies that exist on this planet. Call them demonic, call it evil, call it Satan, whatever you want to choose to call it. Know that it is not you. It is not your truth. It is not who you really are. And when you start to feel these things, you're actually under what's called an adversarial, or you're under an enemy attack in spiritual terms. So I had this amazing teacher who started to teach me about this through the Christian church. And she would be something that I would call like a Christian mystic, or like she was very evangelical, where people would meet with her and she would actually be able to cast out demons the way that Jesus would. And she was a very, very incredibly powerful woman, still one of my favorite women on the planet at this time, because she was such a beautiful teacher to me. And she started to teach me about this concept called deliverance. And what Jesus really came here to teach was how to help deliver humanity out of the darkness that exists on this earth plane. And so, teaching that when we are under an attack internally, we actually have authority over that dark realm, because he shed blood on the cross and was crucified to not only show us that we can escape death and that death isn't real, it's a false concept and paradigm. Like, yes, our physical body dies, the one that our oversoul chose with God to incarnate into, but our spirit and our essence lives on eternally. Like, it never dies. And so he wanted to show that it is a false concept and that we can essentially escape death by ascending our consciousness into higher realms of existence. And the way that we do that is learning how to become one with God, learning that we are made in the likeness and the image of our creator, and that there's no such thing as separation from that. And anything that makes you feel unloved, unworthy, not good enough is of this earthly realm that we have authority over. So she started talking about these concepts and these things, and like she would see into me and see into my spirit, and she said that your spirit is like spinning around in circles. And it was at the time, because I didn't know who I was, I didn't know what I believed, I was very confused, and I was definitely not as strong and as confident as I am today. So that makes sense when she would say that I can see your spirit spinning. Like, it's very confused. And she would tell me these stories that would just, like, my jaw would drop. And I'm like, what do you mean there's demons? Like, she's like, yeah, she was a teacher. And she would say, like, when she would have a parent meeting or a parent teacher conference, and the parents would come in and they would be feeling some kind of certain way, she would see the demonic energies that were attached to them and she would cast them out. And so she would show me or tell me how to use this prayer when I was under an attack. But the one, and it's like making me laugh as I'm hearing her tell this story in my head around, she was having this parent teacher meeting, and like this dad had this like energy that was really angry and was really big and was like standing behind him, like sitting in a chair. And she excused herself from the room, and she basically said, like, any demonic energies, any evil energy that's attached to these two parents need to step outside of my classroom. You are not allowed in this classroom. This is my space. You do not have room here. You have no authority over my realm. And she said that as she's meeting with the parents outside of her classroom, she sees these demonic energies like standing outside of her room at the window as she's meeting with these parents. So there definitely is such thing as like spiritual warfare out there. And these energies and these entities can get attached to us because we give them permission to. Unfortunately, we either inherit them through our family line, which if you listen to my episode on my father wound, you can hear about the energy that I had attached to me from my father's line that was very, very demonic and wanted to destroy not only me, but as a child, but also, my father's family lineage. And she started to tell me that because I follow Christ, I have authority over any energy that is attached to me that is not of my true self. So, first, it takes knowing what your true self is, which is happy, joyful, peaceful, powerful, loving, kind, discerning. Anything that is taking you out of alignment with the truth of who you are and how you want to feel is an entity or an energy that has attached to you that wants to attack you, that wants to keep you from fulfilling your purpose, from being in the highest alignment and state of joy, from experiencing heaven here on earth. And knowing that because Jesus came here to shed his blood and give us authority over the darkness that exists on this earth plane, we think that it's actually us that's feeling the way that we're feeling. And then we go into our mind and our mind starts spinning, trying to come up with answers to why we're feeling the way we're feeling. Sometimes we're just feeling the way we're feeling because we have an energy or entity that's attached to us that we need to revoke and rebuke and be like, no, 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 you don't have room over this realm. You don't have room in my classroom or in my life or in my office. And honestly, sometimes I have to do this with clients where if I feel that there is a part of a client that is wants to attack me, wants to debate me, wants to derail our work, before I know that that client is coming in, I will place a shield of protection around my office and surround it with the white light of the Christ and be like, any energy or entity that is not of the highest white light of the Christ is not allowed in my office. You are not allowed to come into my room. You are not allowed into my field, and you are not allowed to interfere with the work that I am doing with this client. I command you to step aside. You are not welcome here, and you are not allowed to retaliate against me, this client, or anyone that I know by evoking my authority that I have over my realm. And so knowing that you have that power within you to command and declare and allow certain things to like not be in your energy is incredibly powerful. It gives you the freedom to know what is you and what is not you. And what is not you is the fear, is the trauma, is the pain, is the shame. And it's funny because it's something that I don't often talk about much, but it, I'm laughing in my head as I'm thinking about one of my friends he always asks me, he's like, do your voodoo shit over the Bills game. So if I feel like the refs are making like a really bad call, or I can just sense that there's like an evil energy that's surrounding the team that like wants to sabotage, I'll go into like this mode and I do this like prayer where I literally pray a shield of protection over our team and over that stadium and command and declare that any energy that is not of the highest white Christ light to be removed and revoked, because there are entities out there that want to like keep us from operating out of alignment with love, with truth, with wisdom. And knowing that there are these entities out there and knowing that they are and can attach to you in your moments of weakness, it gives you actual freedom to learn how to play in the game of life here in this earthly realm, to be honest. And that's what Jesus came here to show us, right? He shed his blood to relieve us of all sin. And if you've been following me long enough, you know that sin is anything that makes you forget that you are a divine child of God, that you are incredibly powerful, that you are not an accident, that you are made out of the stuff of God, of the highest consciousness in the universe, created you with your permission from your oversoul because you had work that you wanted to come here to do. And so when you forget that you're this powerful being, that you're this divine source of love, then you can command any energy out of your field, right? Any kind of fear, any scarcity, any doubt, any illness. Like you can choose to invoke your authority over that and cast it out of your energy. And actually, what's coming to me right now is a beautiful story that I had with my son this week. He was so sick. Like he's been battling with respiratory issues since the moment that he was born. And I can honestly and confidently say, he had birth trauma. I vaccinated him too early. He was circumcised right away. Like let's not get into like what I believe about the birth process in our earth plane, but I didn't know what I didn't know. And I was a new mom, and I obviously wasn't as awake as I am now. And so I just did what the doctors told me to do. Looking back on that, I would do it totally differently. I had to relieve myself of guilt because I know my son is also his own sovereign being and had a choice by he chose the way he wanted to come into this earth plane and the things that he wanted to experience as his own powerful spiritual being. However, I look back on that and I think, these issues that he has with his breathing and his lungs, he has flare-ups all of the time. So we went to the doctor this week, and I was unfortunately really dissatisfied with what they were telling me. He was getting sicker by the moment. He was having trouble breathing. He had chest pains in his chest. It hurt him to cough. He was really struggling. They said it wasn't pneumonia. He had just gotten over bronchitis the month before. He wasn't running any high fevers, which I think was a very good sign. And basically, all they told me was to stay with the protocol that I've been doing. And then if he's not better in a couple of days, to come back and see him. Mind you, I had this on my consciousness. A client had just come in the week before and told me that her niece was admitted into the hospital with stage 4 pneumonia over Christmas and was now in a coma. And so I had this like fear that was kind of plaguing over me. And I was wondering why that was even brought into my field. Like, why am I getting this information? Like, what's going on with that? But anyways, when the doctor sent us home, I felt really helpless. I called back. I asked for an antibiotic. They refused to give it to me. And that night, my son was going to bed and he was in tears. He was in so much pain. He couldn't cough another cough. I'm like, what do I do? Do I take him to urgent care? I called the urgent care doctor. They were only open for 30 more minutes. And I explained to her my situation. She's like, you either get here within 30 minutes or you wait until morning. I'm going to be the same doctor that's here in the morning, and we'll get him right in. And so I went back in and I had asked my son, I said, do you want to go right now? We have to leave right now if we're going to make it there. Or we wait until morning and we assess how it goes overnight. And I felt very, very helpless because I wasn't sure what my child was dealing with. I didn't trust the doctor that I saw because she's not his normal doctor. She doesn't know his history. She doesn't know like the protocols that we've been doing since he's been a baby. And so I was just plagued with this fear. And obviously my son was too. And as he's crying and as he's in pain, I'm like, okay, buddy, we got to say a prayer. I'm like, this is just what we have to do. And it was the first time that I said the prayer out loud so that he can hear it. And I said, whatever energy or any entity that is attached to me or my child that is causing this illness and is causing this fear in my body, I now revoke you and remove you from your assignment. I cast you in to the highest Christ light to be encapsulated and to be removed and to be sent back to its original source of emanation, never to infiltrate my son or my being again on this day. You are not allowed to retaliate against me, my son, or anyone that we know for the removal and the revoking of this assignment. I now cast you aside where we can reclaim our authority by the blood that was shed for us by the love and the light of Christ. Thank you. You are now removed and revoked. And then I said to my son, I said, okay, buddy, I need you to say some words. And he's like, okay, what, mom? I said, say these words for me. I call all of my energy back to me now. I am whole, I am complete, and I am filled with the divine love of Christ. And what that does is because he's old enough now, he's old enough to invoke his own authority. He's old enough to know that his words create outcomes. He's old enough to know that he's a powerful being, that the words that he speaks over himself become true. And so what that does is it essentially like casts out any other energies or any other entities that are not in the highest alignment for his highest good and health. And lo and behold, this is where the miracle comes in. My son did not cough one cough that night. My son woke up and did not have one coughing attack at all throughout the whole night and throughout the next 2 days. And I had to really ask him, I said, hey, buddy, remember that prayer that we said last night? What do you think? And he was like, well, it worked. It always works. Because this is something that he's learned to ask for from me. when he's super sick. I remember 3 Christmases ago, we live in Buffalo. We had 4 feet of snow. All the pharmacies were closed down. All the doctors were closed down. We couldn't get anywhere. He had one of the worst ear infections that he's ever had in his life. And so I started using something called colloidal silver in it because we had no other options. And I said this prayer, and he was in so much pain, and the ear infection was gone in one day. So I say these things so that you can know that when you feel like you're under attack and when something is plaguing you, you have authority over that darkness, over that fear, over that energy that you feel is attacking you that you can't shake. Know that it is not you. It is not you because it is not love. If it's causing fear, if it's causing doubt, if it's causing anger, if it's causing resentment, it is either trauma and pain that's unprocessed that your higher self came here for you to work through so that you can find out the truth of who you are and realign with self-love and the love of Christ, or it is another entity that is attacking you that you get to command out of your energy field. I can't tell you how much I stand behind this and how much it has gotten me to the point of where I am today and the truth behind what I teach. Because knowing who you are and knowing the power that you have is the war that we need to win within, right? There is spiritual warfare happening all around us all of the time. And it's constantly trying to block us from being able to stand in our truth, to stand in our power, to command what we are going to allow in our lives and what we are not available for anymore. And it is an energy that you become familiar with when you start to know it. Like I've worked with so many clients who, have demons in their room, or like when they were kids were, haunted, or all these things. And it's important for us to know that Jesus came here to teach us how to work with that and overcome that through invoking his authority, our authority as Christed beings, for knowing that we are not victims of our lives and that we are creators of our lives, and that we came here because we have unique soul missions and we have things that we have work to do. And to know that this world and this realm is the illusion. It's not our true selves. Like our body, our flesh, everything is going to die eventually, but we are constantly being reborn and resurrected on a yearly, monthly basis. Like we're always like recreating things. And so when we choose to align with our divinity, we can have more peace and more freedom and like more trust in our pathway to life. So it's knowing that God, creator consciousness, Jesus, divine beings are not separate from you. They are you as much as you are them, right? Like you become the water that you drink. You are one with spirit. And it is this belief that we're separate from that that causes immense suffering. So when you start to live your life as in, like, I am the Christ, I am embodying what Jesus came here to teach me, because he showed how to be human in a world that's full of spiritual warfare and darkness and demonic energies. And if we don't learn that there are powers that be that are trying to control us and infiltrate us through our beliefs and what we see and what we experience, then we continue to repeat patterns until we wake up to the truth of who we are. We are on a path right now on earth where people are waking up to the truth of themselves in mass numbers. Mass numbers. People are waking up spiritually. And I'm going to do another episode on what spiritual awakening really feels like, because it sounds like it's amazing, but it's actually a really, really difficult journey. And people are being faced with a lot of tower moments, a lot of losses, a lot of things that are really painful, things that are being ripped away from their lives. Like we're seeing wildfires, we're seeing war, like we are seeing a lot of things that are being destroyed on this earth plane. And so if you are not in alignment with divine love and you're not invoking your spiritual team to help you, it can be a really, really difficult journey. I remember when I got a reading done and I was still what I would consider a seeker on my spiritual path. And she said that there was this angel next to me named Jacob. And she's like, he is constantly asking you to for him to call on, for you to call on him for help, for assistance. And she told me that I have this like team of angels that's just waiting for me to command them and tell them what to do. And so now I do. Like when my son goes to his father's house for the weekend and I'm not going to see him, I send an angel to be with him and I say exactly what I want. And when my mom, is on the road, she's a truck driver, I send an angel to watch over her truck and to guide her and protect her from any harm. And we have this spiritual team of like enlightened beings who just want us to call on them, to trust them, to lean on them, because we're not meant to walk this human journey alone. And yes, angels come in human form. I have hundreds of angels who have guided me in this life in human form. But know that when you start to talk with someone or you seek a spiritual mentor, if you don't feel more uplifted and you don't feel like there was a positive energy shift after being in that person's energy, and it's invoking more fear in you and it's invoking like more pain or more insecurity or more disruption, that is not meant for you. Like that's your energy or your inner spirit, your inner Holy Spirit telling you that's not the person that you want to seek guidance from. So we need spiritual mentors. We need spiritual teachers. We need people who know us and who get us that we can trust as we continue to find what feels right and what feels true for you. My way is not your way. I'm just here to show you what's available to you if you choose to go on your own path, because all the answers that you need are inside of you. Whether you relate more to like Buddha consciousness or divine feminine consciousness, where it is more of the divine feminine lineages and the goddesses, whether that's like Hathor and Kuan Yin and whatever it is, know that you are always guided. What's calling you in your heart to find answers to is what is meant for you. Those are divinely orchestrated seeds that were planted into your heart for you to follow and for you to learn more about, because you're here to become the highest, most empowered version of yourself in this lifetime. And anything that is keeping you condemned or stuck or tied to this 3D earthly matrix, you have authority over. And just know when you start to ascend and when you start to step into your power, there will be forces and entities that come to withhold you from stepping into that truth. I can't tell you how many times, I'm so familiar with it now, it happens so often, where I feel like the enemy is trying to prohibit me from taking this next step where I'm going to like quantum leap or step into a new timeline. And one of the memories that's coming up to me right now is when, right before I was about to become a life coach, I was diving deep into Dr. Joe Dispenza meditations, and I was envisioning the life I wanted, the life I'm going to have, and what I'm going to do, and what I'm going to teach, and what I'm here to say. And I had this vision, and I knew I wanted to be some kind of a coach. And I was at this dinner with a boyfriend of mine at the time, and he actually had to leave to go back home to change his shoes. Random, right? But I ended up sitting next to this woman and she just started talking to me. And I was like, oh, like, what do you do for work? Whatever. And she was like, oh, I just came back from this event that I was teaching. I help women develop a brand and become life coaches. And I was like, interesting. I manifested this. And lo and behold, she was local. I didn't take her up on working with her, but I knew in my spirit that I was supposed to work with her. And then a year later, I shit you not, I invite one of my friends to come and watch a Bills game with me. And she said she couldn't come until halftime because she was having dinner with another friend and asked if this other friend could come with her. And lo and behold, when she walked through the door to watch the second half of the Bills game, guess who the friend was that she brought with her? The woman that I met at that dinner party that helped women become life coaches. And I took that as a sign that there was no doubt that my higher self was leading me to hire her to do exactly what I'm doing right now, talking to you. But it didn't come with ease. I was tested and I knew that I was under an enemy attack because the moment that I was supposed to meet with her on Zoom, I'll never forget it. It was a Friday at noon, and I was supposed to have a Zoom meeting with her to hire her. But she wanted to get to know me a little bit more outside of, a personal environment. And so I get a phone call that morning from my child's school. Mind you, I saw 2 clients in the morning. Then I get a phone call saying it's my client's school. You have to come and get your son right now because he needs to go to the hospital and he needs stitches. And I'm like, son of a bitch. I have the biggest meeting of my life at noon. I haven't showered yet. I look like crap. I need to get ready. I don't know if I'm going to make it to this meeting if I have to go to the ER and I have to get my son stitches. I'm like, what the hell? And so I said a prayer. I was like, let this be in the highest good, for this to go easily, for this to go quickly, for my son to be well. And lo and behold, we were in and out of the emergency room within 1 hour, because I commanded any and all entities and any and all darkness that's trying to sabotage me from stepping into my purpose to get out of my field. You are not allowed to infiltrate this meeting. You are not allowed to stress me out. You are not allowed to interfere with my purpose and my plan that I have for my life. And so I tell you that story just to say that when you're about to ascend, when you're about to do something big, when you're about to step into a new path for your life, do not be surprised if you have some attacks and things coming against you for you to really push through and to work through. Because most people will actually just submit or will say, oh, well, I'm not meant to do this, or maybe this isn't meant for me, or maybe it wasn't meant to be. No, if that was a dream or that was something that was intuitively planted on your heart and you know that you're supposed to be there, don't ever let anything convince you that you're not, ever. That means that some other energy or entity out there is trying to prohibit you from stepping into your purpose and to your highest path and timeline of this life. So I think that that's a wrap. The whole reason I wanted to do this in the very first place was to break free from the bad rap that Jesus got, saying that Jesus is the one that you have to worship, that's going to save you, that if you don't believe in Jesus, that you're going to hell. No, he is here to be your ally. He is here to be your brother. He is here to be your teacher, to help you remember how powerful you are, to help you remember that you are perfectly and wonderfully made, and that before you were formed in your mother's womb, you were set apart. You have a unique mission here on this planet. So don't let anything convince you otherwise. Remember that you are being divinely guided all of the time, and that the answers are within your unique heart, body, mind, and soul. But it will take some work for you to clear out your traumas, for you to clear out past programming, for you to clear out shame and pain and blame and all things that are of this earthly realm, so that you can stand in the truth of your inner peace and authority for what you believe is yours. I also say this prayer in the morning that was actually given to me by a teacher named Paul Selig, who channels amazing books through divine guidance. And it is, I am an instrument of love, truth, and wisdom. I know who I am in truth. I am a messenger from God. I know what I am in truth. I am a blessing from God. I know who I serve in truth. I serve God. As I rest in the power of my Creator, value is what I am. If you say that prayer every single morning, you will notice that you will start to feel lighter. Synchronicities will start to happen. New people will come into your awareness, and things will start to radically shift because you'll stop seeing yourself as unworthy, unlovable, broken, wounded, and things will start to sync up, and you will start your mission on your spiritual seeking journey, which most of us are already embarking on. And know that you don't have to do this alone. I am developing a amazing course coming up at the end of the month for Divine Feminine Awakening. It is called Wake Up the Worthy Warrior, where I teach you how to really channel the inner warrior within you, to conquer the lies within your consciousness, to step more into your divine feminine power and into your essence, so that you can co-create and manifest the life that you deserve here on this earth plane. And if you want to learn more about that, subscribe to my newsletter and make sure that you are hitting that like button and that subscribe button so that you never miss an episode. And share this with someone that you love who is in the thick of it and needs to know that they are not alone and that they are on a journey that they cannot screw up. So thank you all so much. I love you, and I can't wait to talk with you again next week.